I came home late again. That damned meeting had run over, and I knew as soon as I walked through the door, there'd be hell to pay. Allison was in the kitchen, her arms crossed, her expression already set to battle mode. You're late. Again. Her tone was sharp, not the kind you could dismiss. Do you even remember what day it is? I set my briefcase down and sighed. Allison, it was work. I couldn't just leave. What do you want me to do? I want you to stop making excuses. She slammed the dish towel onto the counter. You're always working, always running late. You don't even care how much time you're away. God forbid you prioritize your family for once. This wasn't new. Lately, everything turned into a fight. Still, I tried to reason with her. I'm doing this for us. For you, for yourself, she snapped, cutting me off. I'm tired of being second place to your job. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. Great. Just what we needed. I opened the door to find my younger brother, Matt, standing there with a six-pack of beer and his signature lopsided grin. Perfect timing, he said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. You two sounded like you could use a referee. Matt was always the peacemaker, the guy who hated drama but loved sticking his nose in where it didn't belong. Not a good night, Matt, I muttered, but he brushed past me and headed for the kitchen. Allison, he called cheerfully, let's calm down and crack open a drink. Huh? Brian's here now. No need to fight. She didn't even look at him. If you think beer solves everything, you're just as clueless as your brother. I rubbed my temples. Matt, maybe you should. Nope, he interrupted. I'm staying. Someone's got to mediate before you two kill each other. He handed me a beer and gestured for me to sit at the kitchen table. Reluctantly, I sat. Allison lingered by the counter, glaring at both of us. You're just going to sit there and let him take your side. She snapped at me. I'm not taking sides, Matt said smoothly. I'm just saying, maybe this isn't worth fighting over. Brian works hard, sure, but he's here now, right? Let's focus on that. Focus on what? Allison shot back. The few minutes he can spare before he's off saving the world again? Okay, that's enough, I said, my patience wearing thin. Can we just… No, we can't, she interrupted, her voice cold and sharp. I'm done talking to you. Do whatever you want, Brian. She stormed out, her heels clicking against the tile as she disappeared into the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. The tension in the room was suffocating. I took a long swig of beer and stared at the table. She's wound up, Matt said after a moment, leaning back in his chair. You should have called, man. Would have saved you a world of hurt. I didn't have time to call, I replied curtly. She doesn't get it. Maybe not. He stood and stretched. But you know how she is. Let me go talk to her. I looked at him, surprised. What? No, Matt, just leave it. Come on, he said, grinning. You're both stubborn as hell. Someone's got to play diplomat. I'll smooth things over. Before I could protest, he was already walking toward the bedroom. Matt, I called after him, but he waved me off. Trust me. 5 minutes, tops. I sat there, fuming silently. The beer tasted bitter, and the silence in the house was deafening. 5 minutes passed, then 10. I strained to listen, hearing faint murmurs behind the closed door. It was probably nothing. Matt was just talking her down, telling her to give me a break, right? But then, I heard it, a soft laugh. Hers, followed by his voice, low and almost playful. My grip on the beer tightened. A few more seconds of strained silence passed. Then, unmistakably, the sound of a muffled giggle and something else. Something intimate. I froze. No, it couldn't be. But the sounds grew louder. Whispers. A soft moan. I set the beer down, my hand trembling. Every instinct screamed at me to get up, to go to that door and throw it open. Instead, I stood in the kitchen, paralyzed, straining to hear what was happening just feet away. I heard a low voice, Matt's, and her response, something teasing and flirtatious. Then, the faint but unmistakable sound of a kiss. That's when my world began to crumble. I stood there, gripping the edge of the kitchen counter so hard my knuckles turned white. The muffled sounds from the bedroom didn't stop. Every passing second felt like an eternity. No, I muttered under my breath. They wouldn't. They couldn't. But the sound said otherwise. A soft rustle, a muted gasp, hers. Then Matt's low, murmured words, just barely audible. It was like he was trying to coax her into something. The pit in my stomach grew heavier. My pulse pounded in my ears, my breath coming in shallow bursts. I didn't want to believe what I was hearing, but I wasn't naive enough to ignore it either. I stepped away from the counter, my shoes making the faintest squeak on the tile. The noise from the bedroom faltered for a second, as if they'd heard me, but then it picked up again. A laugh. A throaty, intimate laugh. Allison's laugh. The blood roared in my ears. My legs felt like lead as I forced myself to move closer to the bedroom door. My steps were slow, deliberate, like I was walking into enemy territory. I paused just outside the door, my heart hammering so loud I was sure they could hear it. The door wasn't fully shut, just a crack of light spilled into the dim hallway. Inside, I could hear everything. Allison, Matt's voice was low, coaxing. Come on. You know you want this. A muffled giggle answered him. You're bad, she teased. You like it, he replied. Something in the room shifted. Fabric, maybe sheets, followed by a gasp, sharper this time. I clenched my fists. My whole body was shaking now, every muscle tense, my brain screaming at me to throw the door open, but I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I leaned closer, my face inches from the crack in the door. I needed to see. I needed proof. Inside, I caught a glimpse of them. Allison was sitting on the edge of the bed, her hair disheveled, her blouse slipping off one shoulder. Matt was standing in front of her, close, way too close, his hand brushing her cheek. Her lips parted as she looked up at him, and before I could process what was happening, he leaned down. Their lips met in a kiss that wasn't hesitant or uncertain. It was deliberate, hungry. I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat. What the hell? A sharp, bitter laugh escaped me before I could stop it. The sound cut through the air like a gunshot. Inside the room, they froze. Allison, I said, my voice like ice, loud enough to cut through the thick tension. Matt. The door creaked open as I shoved it wide, revealing the scene in full. Allison jumped up, her face pale and her blouse hastily tugged back into place. Matt stood there, looking stunned, like a deer caught in headlights. What the hell is this? I barked, my voice echoing through the room. Allison opened her mouth, but no words came out. She looked from me to Matt and back again, her eyes wild with panic. Brian, it's not what you think, Matt stammered, stepping forward. Not what I think. I shouted. You were kissing my wife, you bastard. What the hell do you call that? Allison took a step forward, her hands outstretched as if to calm me. Brian, please. Just listen. Don't. I snapped, cutting her off. Don't even try to explain this. Matt, ever the smooth talker, tried again. Brian, it was a mistake. I swear. It didn't mean anything. I laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. Didn't mean anything? You're standing here in my house, in my bedroom, with my wife, and you think it didn't mean anything? Allison's face twisted, her panic shifting into defiance. You're never here, she shouted, her voice breaking. You're always working, always gone. What did you expect, Brian? My stomach turned. So this is my fault? Are you seriously blaming me for this? Matt stepped between us, his hands raised in a pathetic attempt to mediate. Let's just calm down, okay? Nobody needs to get hurt here. I stared at him, my vision blurring with rage. Get out, I said, my voice deadly quiet. Brian, he started, but I cut him off. I said, get out. Matt hesitated, then grabbed his jacket and hurried past me, his head down. I turned to Allison, who stood there, arms crossed, glaring at me like she was the victim. You're unbelievable, I said, my voice trembling with anger. I trusted you. I trusted both of you. She said nothing, just stared at me, defiant to the end. I left the room before I did something I'd regret. The door slammed behind me, the sound reverberating through the house like the closing of a chapter one never wanted to read in the first place. I paced the hallway like a caged animal, adrenaline surging through my veins. My hands shook, my teeth clenched, and every rational thought I had was drowned out by the echoes of Allison's laugh and Matt's voice in that room. I could still hear them, soft whispers, shuffling footsteps. Were they seriously just lingering in there, like nothing happened? My fists curled, the tension in my body begging for release. I couldn't let them get away with this. Suddenly, the bedroom door creaked open. Matt stepped out first, his face pale, his hands up like he was walking into an armed standoff. "Brian, man, let's just talk, okay?" His voice trembled, which only fueled my rage. "Talk?" I said, my voice low and dangerous. "You think we're going to talk after what I just saw? Allison and I." "Don't," I snarled, cutting him off. "Don't even try to explain it. I heard you. I saw you. There's no talking your way out of this, Matt." Behind him, Allison appeared in the doorway, arms crossed and lips pressed into a tight line. "Oh, for God's sake, Brian, calm down," she snapped. That was it. The last straw. "Calm down," I exploded, my voice rising to a roar. "You were kissing my brother in my house, in our bedroom, and you're telling me to calm down?" She rolled her eyes, like I was the one being unreasonable. "It wasn't what it looked like," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "Really? Then why don't you explain it, Allison?" I stepped closer, my voice shaking with fury. "Explain why my brother was all over you, and why you let him." She hesitated, her defiant mask slipping for just a moment. But then she straightened, tossing her hair back. "Maybe if you were around more, I wouldn't have needed to." "Don't you dare," I snapped, my finger pointing at her like a weapon. "Don't you dare blame this on me." "I'm not blaming you," she said, her voice rising to match mine. "I'm just saying, maybe if you paid attention to your wife instead of your job, you'd know how I've been feeling." "Oh, so this is about your feelings?" I shot back, incredulous. "Your feelings justify sleeping with my brother? Are you hearing yourself?" Matt tried to step in again, his hands up like he was playing mediator. "Come on, Brian. This is getting out of hand." "Shut up, Matt," I barked, turning on him. "You don't get to say a damn thing. You're just as guilty as she is." His mouth snapped shut, and he stepped back, his shoulders slumping. For the first time, he looked genuinely ashamed. Good. He should be. But Allison? She didn't flinch. Instead, she squared her shoulders and crossed her arms, glaring at me like I was the one who had betrayed her. "You know what?" she said, her voice cold. "Maybe if you weren't such a self-righteous workaholic, I wouldn't have had to go to someone else for..." "For what?" I demanded, cutting her off. "Attention? Validation? What, Allison? What the hell did you get from him that you couldn't get from me?" She hesitated, her mouth opening and closing as she searched for an answer. But there was no answer she could give that would make this right. I laughed, a bitter, humorless sound that filled the hallway. "You know what? Don't bother. I don't care. Whatever pathetic excuse you've got, I don't want to hear it." Her defiance faltered, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. "Brian, No," I said, my voice cold and final. "We're done. You and me, Allison, we're done." Her face twisted, a mix of shock and anger. "You're just going to throw it all away? Just like that?" I stared at her, my jaw tight. "You already did." I turned to Matt, who stood frozen like a kid caught stealing candy. "And you?" I said, my voice dripping with venom. "You're no longer my brother. Don't ever come near me again." "Brian, come on," he said weakly. "We can fix this." "There's nothing to fix," I shouted, my voice echoing through the house. "You made your choice. Both of you. Now you get to live with it." The silence that followed was deafening. Allison stood there, her arms falling to her sides, her mouth opening and closing like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Matt just stared at the floor, looking like he wanted to disappear. Without another word, I walked past them, grabbed my keys off the counter, and headed for the door. "Brian, wait." Allison called after me, her voice breaking. "Where are you going?" I didn't answer. I didn't look back. I slammed the door behind me, the sound reverberating through the quiet night. As I got into my car and started the engine, I caught a glimpse of the house in my rearview mirror. The place I had called home. The place I thought was safe. But not anymore. I pulled out of the driveway, my mind racing with everything that had just happened. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't stay there. Not with them. Not after this. I didn't go far. Just down the street to the empty lot where I could park, kill the engine, and let the silence wrap around me. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went numb, my mind replaying everything I had just seen and heard like a twisted highlight reel. Matt, my brother, Allison, my wife, together. The betrayal hit like a freight train every time I thought about it. Two of the people I should have been able to trust most in this world had torn my life apart in the span of minutes. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring blankly through the windshield. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just simmered. The kind of rage that sits low in your gut, waiting to explode. Eventually, my phone buzzed on the passenger seat. I didn't have to look to know who it was. Allison. I let it buzz until it stopped. Then it buzzed again. And again. Finally, I picked it up and swiped to read the texts. Allison. Brian, please come home. We need to talk. It's not what you think. Please don't leave like this. I stared at the words, a bitter laugh bubbling in my throat. Not what I think. Was she kidding? I had seen everything. There was no way she could spin this. The phone buzzed again. Matt. Man, I screwed up. I'm sorry. Please call me. I tossed the phone onto the dashboard. The audacity of them both, trying to smooth this over as if a few sorry texts would erase what they'd done. My thoughts spiraled. I pictured them back at the house, scrambling to come up with excuses, maybe even blaming each other. Did they think I'd just come crawling back? That I'd forgive them? No, not a chance in hell. The phone buzzed again, and this time, I snapped. Grabbing it off the dashboard, I hit answer without checking who it was. Allison, I growled. There was a pause on the other end, then her voice, soft, trembling. Brian, please. Can we talk? We're talking now, I said, my voice cold. What do you want? I'm sorry, she stammered. It was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen. I laughed, the sound harsh and hollow. Didn't mean for it to happen? You didn't mean to kiss him? To invite him into our bedroom? It wasn't like that, she said quickly. He came on to me. I didn't know how to stop him. I gritted my teeth, my grip tightening on the phone. You didn't know how to stop him? You're not a child, Allison. You're my wife. You could have said no. You could have told him to leave. But you didn't, did you? Silence. That's what I thought, I said. She started to cry. Real or fake, I couldn't tell, and frankly, I didn't care. Brian, I swear, it didn't mean anything. I still love you. Love? I spat, cutting her off. You don't get to use that word. Not after what you've done. I made a mistake, she sobbed. Please, Brian, don't throw us away because of one stupid mistake. One stupid mistake? My voice rose, sharp and biting. This isn't a mistake, Allison. This is betrayal. You didn't just trip and fall into my brother's arms. You made a choice. Both of you did. She fell silent, the only sound on the line her shaky breaths. I'll be back tomorrow to get my things, I said, my voice like ice. Don't be there when I do. Brian, please. I hung up, tossing the phone onto the passenger seat. I leaned back in my chair, staring up at the darkened sky. My chest heaved as the weight of everything bore down on me. Tomorrow. I'd go back tomorrow. Tonight, I just needed to get through the night without losing my mind. The next day, I returned to the house. It was eerily quiet when I stepped inside. The kind of quiet that makes your skin crawl. Allison's car wasn't in the driveway, and the place felt empty, almost sterile. Good. I moved quickly, grabbing a suitcase from the closet and throwing in as much as I could. Clothes, shoes, toiletries. I didn't care about being neat or organized. I just wanted to get out of there. As I packed, I caught glimpses of the life we'd built together. Photos on the walls. Our wedding album on the shelf. Little mementos from vacations and anniversaries. It was like staring at a stranger's life. None of it felt real anymore. My phone buzzed again. I ignored it. The last thing I packed was a framed photo of us from years ago. Before all of this, I stared at it for a moment, my jaw tight, then placed it face down on the nightstand. By the time I walked out the door, I felt lighter. Not better, not even close, but lighter. This wasn't over. Not yet. But I was done with that house, that life, and everything it represented. Let them deal with the fallout. The day after I left the house, I couldn't sit still. Sleep had been a joke. My head ached from lack of rest, and my stomach churned with the memory of Allison and Matt. I knew one thing. I wasn't done. They thought I'd just walk away quietly? No chance. Around mid-morning, I finally picked up my phone. There were more missed calls and texts from both of them. I skimmed through a few. Allison, we need to talk. I miss you. Please don't do anything rash. Matt, Brian, I screwed up, man. Can we fix this? Sue me if you want, but let's not throw away years of family over a mistake. Their audacity boiled my blood. A mistake? They had shattered my trust, and now they wanted a clean slate? No. If they wanted to play games, I'd finish this my way. I drove to a nearby cafe where the Wi-Fi was free and I could work in peace. Sitting in the corner, I opened my laptop and started digging. I didn't need to look far to find the ammo I needed. Matt wasn't exactly subtle about his personal life. His social media accounts were littered with pictures, check-ins, and interactions that painted a damning picture of his perfect life. A life that, apparently, included seducing his brother's wife. Then there was Allison. She blocked me on some platforms, cowardly, but left enough breadcrumbs to show her recent bad choices were part of a larger pattern. Nothing definitive, but enough to cast doubt. I screenshotted everything. Messages, photos, tag posts. It wasn't about revenge, at least, that's what I told myself. This was about setting the record straight. About making sure they couldn't gaslight their way out of what they'd done. By mid-afternoon, I had everything I needed. I leaned back in my chair, letting out a slow breath. My next move would be brutal, but they'd earned every ounce of it. The first stop was Matt's workplace. He'd been bragging for years about his cushy job in sales, how he was irreplaceable to his boss. Let's see how irreplaceable he was after I handed over a dossier of his escapades, complete with timestamps showing he'd used work hours to flirt with Allison. I walked into the office building, calm on the outside but seething on the inside. The receptionist looked up and smiled. Can I help you? I need to see Mr. Donnelly, I said, keeping my voice steady. Do you have an appointment? No, I replied, sliding the envelope across the desk. But he'll want to see this. Her smile faltered, but she took the envelope and disappeared down the hall. A few minutes later, a balding man in a sharp suit emerged, holding the now open file. His expression was unreadable. Brian, is it? He asked, his tone cautious. That's right. He gestured for me to follow him into a conference room. As soon as the door shut, he dropped the professionalism. What the hell is this? Evidence, I said simply. Your star employee is a liar and a cheat. That's what. Donnelly looked through the papers again, his jaw tightening. This is serious. Very, I said, crossing my arms. But I'm not here to ruin your business. I just thought you should know the kind of person you're employing. He nodded, his lips pressed into a thin line. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. I left without another word. Let Matt deal with the fallout. Next, I turned my attention to Allison. She'd been hiding at her sister's place, according to the GPS tracker I'd slipped into her car months ago, back when I trusted her. I didn't show up unannounced. That wasn't my style. Instead, I sent her a message. Me, you've got one chance to come clean before this gets public. Meet me at Miller Park in an hour. Alone. She responded almost immediately. Allison, fine. I'll be there. I arrived early, parking where I could see the entrance. She showed up 10 minutes later, her face pale, her hair tied back like she hadn't bothered to fix herself up. She spotted me and walked over slowly, her arms crossed. You wanted to talk? Talk? I said, standing to meet her. No, Allison. I wanted to watch you squirm. Her eyes widened. Brian, don't do this. Oh, we're past that point. I cut in, my voice sharp. I gave you everything. My trust, my time, my life. And you threw it all away for him. Her lip quivered, but I didn't let up. You're lucky I haven't dragged your name through the mud yet. But if you think I'm going to let you off easy, you're dead wrong. She started crying, her shoulders shaking. Brian, I'm sorry. I was stupid. I wasn't thinking. You weren't thinking? I said, my voice rising. You thought enough to sneak around, to lie to my face. Don't insult me with, I wasn't thinking. I'll do anything, she sobbed. I'll fix this. I swear. I stared at her, the woman I had once loved, now reduced to tears and empty promises. No, I said finally, my voice cold. You can't fix this, and you'll never get another chance. I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there in the middle of the park. I drove away from the park without looking back. Allison's sobs echoed in my ears, but they didn't move me. Not anymore. What little sympathy I might have had was buried under the weight of her betrayal. As I turned onto the highway, my phone buzzed on the passenger seat. I glanced at the screen. Matt, we need to talk. Please, Brian. The gall of him. I ignored it, gripping the wheel tighter. My next destination wasn't far, and I wasn't done dismantling the mess they'd made of my life. By the time I arrived at my parents' house, I had calmed down just enough to keep my voice steady. My father opened the door, his brow furrowed when he saw my expression. Brian? Everything all right? No, I said bluntly, stepping inside. Where's Mom? In the living room, he said slowly, shutting the door behind me. I walked in to find my mother knitting on the couch. She looked up and smiled, but her face fell the second she saw me. What's wrong, honey? I didn't waste time. It's Matt. He's been sleeping with Allison. The words hung in the air like a bomb, detonating in their stunned silence. My mother dropped her knitting, her hand flying to her mouth. My father stepped into the room, his face darkening. Are you sure? He asked, his voice low. I caught them, I said, my tone flat. In my house. In my bedroom. My mother gasped, tears welling in her eyes. No, Matt wouldn't. He did, I said, cutting her off. I saw it, heard it. There's no denying it. My father's jaw tightened, his fists clenching at his sides. That little bastard, he muttered. Dad, I said, turning to face him. I'm telling you this because I'm done with him. I don't care what you do, but as far as I'm concerned, Matt isn't part of this family anymore. My mother started to cry, her sobs breaking the heavy silence. My father put a hand on her shoulder, but his eyes stayed locked on mine. We'll deal with him, he said firmly. You focus on yourself, Brian. I nodded, my chest tightening. Thank you. Later that evening, I got the update I had been waiting for. My phone buzzed, and this time, I picked it up. Brian. My father's voice came through, calm but cold. I talked to your brother. What did he say? I asked, though I already knew. He tried to deny it at first, but when I pressed him, he admitted everything. My father sighed, the sound heavy with disappointment. I told him he's not welcome here anymore. Not until he apologizes to you. And even then, it'll take more than words to fix this. I leaned back in my chair, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. Good luck with that, Brian, my father said, his voice softening. I'm sorry this happened. You didn't deserve it. Thanks, Dad, I said, my voice tight. I appreciate it. I hung up, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and emptiness. Matt had lost his place in the family, but it didn't feel like a victory. The next day, the fallout reached Allison. I had filed for divorce the morning after our confrontation. The process was quick. I wasn't interested in dragging it out, and I didn't care about splitting assets. She could have the house, the furniture, even the damn car. All I wanted was my freedom. Her reaction, however, was far from quiet. Brian, she cried over the phone when the papers were served. You can't do this. Please, let's talk. There's nothing to talk about, I said, my tone icy. But I love you, she wailed, her voice breaking. You loved me so much you slept with my brother. I snapped. This is on you, Allison, not me. She sobbed, her words turning into a jumbled mess. I ended the call, blocking her number before she could try again. For the next week, I watched their lives fall apart from a distance. Matt lost his job. His boss didn't appreciate having an employee with such poor judgment, and the evidence I had provided only sealed the deal. Allison, meanwhile, was forced to move back in with her sister. The house, the one I had left for her, was too much for her to handle alone. Their reputations were in shambles. Friends turned their backs, family members distanced themselves. And me? I felt free. For the first time in years, I wasn't weighed down by the expectations of a marriage that had been crumbling for far longer than I realized. On a quiet Saturday morning, I sat on the porch of my new apartment, sipping coffee and watching the sunrise. My phone buzzed, and I picked it up. It was a message from Matt. Matt, I'm sorry, Brian, for everything. Please, let me make it right. I stared at the screen for a long moment before typing a single word. No. It had been 3 months since my world was torn apart, and somehow, life had started to feel normal again. Or maybe not normal, different, better, even. The divorce was finalized quickly. Allison didn't fight me on it, probably because she knew she didn't have a leg to stand on. She kept the house, the car, and all the trappings of the life we'd built together. It didn't matter. I didn't want any of it. Matt had gone radio silent after his last pathetic apology. From what I heard through the family grapevine, he was living in a cheap apartment on the other side of town, struggling to make ends meet after losing his job. Our parents were firm. They wouldn't bail him out. He was on his own. Good. One evening, I found myself at a bar I used to frequent before life got so complicated. It was a quiet place, not too crowded, just the way I liked it. I was nursing a beer, watching the game on the screen above the bar, when someone slid onto the stool next to me. Brian. I turned, and there she was. Allison. She looked different, tired, worn down. Her once pristine appearance was now frayed at the edges, like life had chewed her up and spit her out. Allison, I said flatly, taking a sip of my beer. What are you doing here? I wanted to see you, she said, her voice small. Why? She fidgeted with the strap of her purse, avoiding my eyes. I wanted to apologize. Properly. I let out a short, humorless laugh. You think that'll change anything? No, she said quickly. I need you to know that I'm sorry. For everything. For Matt. For what I did to us. Us? I shook my head, setting my beer down. There hasn't been an us since the day I walked in on you and my brother in our bedroom. She winced, her shoulders slumping. I know I ruined everything, and I hate myself for it. But I loved you, Brian. I still do. I stared at her, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Loved me? I said finally. Allison, you don't do what you did to someone you love. You don't lie to their face. You don't destroy their trust. That wasn't love. That was selfishness. She opened her mouth to respond but stopped, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I know, she whispered. And I don't care how sorry you are. I continued, my voice steady but cold. Sorry doesn't fix anything. It doesn't undo what you did. It doesn't erase the betrayal. Her tears spilled over, but I felt nothing. No sympathy. No anger. Just nothing. I hope you figure out how to live with yourself, I said, standing and tossing cash on the bar. But I'm done letting you be part of my life. I walked out, leaving her sitting there, her sobs fading into the background. Weeks turned into months, and the weight of everything began to lift. I focused on myself for the first time in years. New hobbies, new friends, a new sense of freedom. One day, I got a call from my father. Brian, he said, his tone cautious. Your mother wants to have everyone over for dinner next weekend? Everyone? I asked, already knowing the answer. Yes, he said with a sigh. Including Matt. She thinks it's time to put the past behind us. I was silent for a moment, then said, I'll think about it, but I didn't have to think long. The answer was no. That weekend, I spent the evening at a local park, watching the sunset from a bench overlooking the lake. It was peaceful quiet, the kind of moment I hadn't appreciated in a long time. As the sun dipped below the horizon, my phone buzzed with a text from my father. Dad, we missed you at dinner. Call me when you're ready to talk. I didn't reply. Instead, I slipped my phone into my pocket, leaned back on the bench, and closed my eyes. For the first time in months, I felt at peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because I had let go of the people who had tried to destroy me. Allison, Matt, even the parts of myself that had clung to the hope of reconciliation. They were all behind me now. And for the first time in a long time, I was looking forward.